So in early 2017, I was in an extremely vulnerable state. I had just spent months in Japan exposing Pizzagate and WikiLeaks revelations about elite child abuse. I had major arguments with people I now believe were infiltrators in my shared house. I quit my job, was physically very weak, around 120 pounds, and I started doing urine therapy and fasting because of severe gut damage. I decided to go fully sovereign. I left Japan with roughly $20,000 in savings, and I was planning to travel independently and break away from the surveillance I had been under for years. And I also wanted to no longer take part in the corrupt society any longer after seeing its abuses through the Pizzagate revelations. That's how I was so disgusted by this fake society that I decided to completely just drop out and try to travel for a few years independently on the savings that I had. I no longer wanted anything to do with this fake society on the level of, you know, what I was doing at that time. So, I arrived in Georgetown, Penang, Malaysia. Shortly after arriving, I was approached outside a bar by a Filipino man named Jomar. And he love bombed me, showed me what he claimed were legitimate business documents, and convinced me to invest in a supposed restaurant or bar venture that would give me a passive income. I ended up signing a lease for a unit in a half built luxury apartment development in the hills of Penang. The building was still under heavy construction, constant loud slamming and noise all day, which made it a living nightmare. Jomar then introduced me to the rest of the crew. Munish, an Indian man who claimed to be an electrical engineer, Chona, and Anne Marie. Over the following weeks, this coordinated group systematically drained nearly all of my $20,000 savings through a series of fake investments, pressure to sell the last of my gold and silver, and wire transfer, supposedly, you know, um, pretty much they were fake helping me get my money out of my bank in Japan, right? And I went to this fake Japanese friend of Joe Mars in Bangkok to get the money handed to me. So, yeah, and because I was having trouble moving money out of my Japan bank account, pretty much, and so the documents they showed me were fake. The business never existed. Yeah, and by the way, Jomar was extracting money out of that bank account through his fake friend in Japan, right? So it was all a giant scam. So the documents that he showed me were also fake, and the business that he claimed to have ran in the past never existed. During this time, Jomar casually supplied me with a full block of weed in a country where even small amounts of cannabis can mean years in prison, and larger amounts can trigger trafficking charges with caning or death or the death penalty, even. I was so paranoid about the risk that I ate the entire block within hours just to destroy the physical evidence. Chona was notably skilled at rolling blunts, which suggested this group had regular access to supply chains that went far beyond random tourist scammers. Later, Munish made a strong comment to me. He was surprised they even let me through airport security because of the wired money. Um, yeah, it felt like deliberate psychological manipulation. So, pretty much I returned to America in May 2017, and I wired more money to them pretty much like because I thought, well, that's going to secure the business, right? The principal to start the business. But that's what, Munish ended up, uh, well, anyhow, it was all a scam. So, but I returned to Penang in November 2017 trying to figure out what had happened with the business, but the money was gone. I left Malaysia with essentially nothing. And Yeah, it was at that time that Munish told me he was surprised that they even let me back through the security gates at the airport because he claimed that I had wired money to a criminal group and that Joe Marr's group were criminals or something of this nature. Um, so this was not a simple random tourist scam. The level of coordination, the use of fake professional documents, the multi-person crew, the easy access to drugs in one of the strictest drug law countries on earth, and the precise timing right after I tried to break away from surveillance in Japan following heavy Pizzagate exposure. All point to this being the next stage of the same long-term handler surveillance network that has followed me for decades. The network has repeatedly used substance supply as both a control mechanism and future smear material. First, the Malaysia crew in 2017, later, Adams supplying me, and Aiden offering to mail me weed. They repeatedly used fake documents as a signature tactic. They use love bomb, then flip cycles, financial isolation, and psychological destabilization whenever I try to go independent. Now in 2026, the same network is actively resurfacing the Malaysia story and trying to flip I was scammed out of my life savings while sick and vulnerable into some kind of criminal narrative about me and criminal assets and you know wired money to criminals or worse or not even that, but mostly they're just trying to smear me as some sort of pedophile or whatever, like part of their gang stalking smear campaign, right? So yeah, they're basically claiming that I was involved in the most shady criminal activity that includes like pedophilia, and this is all lies and bullshit on part of this satanic gang stalking network. So that's what they're doing right now, and they are doing this at the exact moment I'm exposing um, patterns, right? Substance supply patterns, their infiltration of health communities, right? And their adjacent trafficking optics or trafficking adjacent optics, rather. But so this is not random. This is the network projecting its operational core by weaponizing my own victimization against me. So the ledger is now updated.